Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special and very different Andy Makes a Friend. It's not just me. It's where I'm joined by Liz and Daniel.
He made two friends. It's
I'm
us.
the real journey was friendship along the way. I nailed it. So yeah, I'm a real loose unit over here. Okay, so everybody's inside. That's what we're doing. That's what life is now. So let's be creative. Let's flex. Let's use our imagination. Imagine like a rainbow appeared. With your imagination.
Imagination.
So yeah. If you've ever seen Andy Makes a Friend before, thank you. And usually I create fantasy worlds. I've done a couple episodes about specific campaign settings I've created. So yeah, let's just build a campaign setting from scratch. Pardon me, let me... Crap. That was dumb. I should have moved to the other window. There we go. That's better. Okay. So, Daniel's frozen again. And I think he just said he'll be right back.
Okay.
So, yeah, where do we want to start?
Do you want to do like an overview, or do we want to do like, you have a specific theme you wanted to go off of, or?
That's a great question. So, let me turn that back around on you. Is there a theme you want to go off? Do you want to do something like a little more low magic? Which...
Anything without plagues.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna... No plagues, no apocalypses, no zombies. Let's just avoid all that.
I do like, I will say, desert settings a lot. And I do like settings that have a lot of sort of old temples and ruined cities. Not necessarily like, not necessarily like post-apocalyptic, but like sort of, I'm trying to think of a good analogy. Like, obviously there would still be people around, but there's sort of like semi-abandoned or abandoned cities, you know, that are being discovered or rediscovered, you know, by precursor civilizations. Anything that's like in a desert setting and has that kind of theme, I really enjoy.
Okay, so, yeah, okay. Liz, what do you think?
I always like, well, desert settings you have to worry about, because like, if you go out into the desert, you're probably gonna die. So there's always like a little bit of resource management you have to do for deserts and that kind of thing. Like, I just generally like, I'm not too fond of low magic settings. Like, I feel if you need magic, or if your world has magic, you might as well go big or go home. It's like, well, like, you sort of hinder yourself if you do too little magic, because then it's like, oh, this can't work because arbitrary rules. And it's like, well, why is those rules arbitrary? Like, because if I did it, then I don't know how to write my way out of it. And I'm like, okay, then don't write your way into it.
Exactly. Like, and
Yes, that is... Thank you. That is a... Well, there's no other way out of that situation. Of course there is. You wrote it.
No, it's like, the thing about that is, like, I'm okay with magic being rare, but I'm not okay with, like, arbitrarily, oh no, only under these conditions can you use magic. It's like one thing to have, oh, people have just kind of forgotten how to do magic. It's another thing to have, like, no, you're not allowed, you can't have this, it's too fun, we're gonna take your toys away.
Yeah, like, I don't mind if it's like, oh, magic is hard to do, so science took over. I don't mind those kind of settings. I mind it's like, why can't magic do this? And it's like, well, it's again, and it would be like the creator trying to be like putting science into magic, which is like, well, technically it disobeys the laws of physics. And like, well, yeah, it's magic. It's supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Literally what magic is, my dude.
It's a thing you can't explain, so I don't know why you're trying to explain it.
Now, of course, if you sort of merge the two, you get Magitech, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And like I'm a strong Magitech supporter.
Marty in chat, I think, has a great idea for a setting. You each get one spell, and it hates you. So, yeah, I think that spells that hate you is the next campaign we'll run. Everybody gets a cantrip, and it despises you.
Yeah, I have a mage hand, but before I get to use it, it slaps me once on each cheek. It's like, go get that water bottle.
But no, yeah, that's all good. Soup's asking in chat if anyone has seen Onward yet. I have not seen Onward yet, no.
I've been meaning to. I think it's on digital.
And I think it's coming to Disney Plus soon.
Yeah.
So
I know, like, you can rent it off of iTunes, I think, but...
I think Disney Plus might be one of those things that's harder to get in Canada. I'm not sure. Or, like, this discography is just not there.
Sure, yeah. I know England, like, just got The Mandalorian, 6 months after it came out. Let's see. I was going to say something. Oh, something to kind of piggyback off of what Liz was saying. Someone who does do magic rules well, and they're kind of known for it, is Brandon Sanderson, who writes the Mistborn books and the Stormlight Archives. All of his magics have they all have rules that make sense, and he never breaks them. He just shuffles cards in front of your face, and then you're mad at him when he plays his hand, and you're like, fuck you, how did you do that?
Look,
and he never broke any of his rules.
Marty said something about Al Bhed. I love Middle Eastern inspired settings a lot. They're amazing. That's all I really have to say about that. And yes, Magitech is great.
But yeah, so I think if you do magic, and granted, magic in that is not necessarily rare. Lots of people have bits of it. They're just people who are more powerful than others. So I think you can, if you do magic rules well, they can work really well. In a game like Dungeons and Dragons, though, to go outside of the core rulebook, I think is really difficult. Like, if you're just like, yeah, but this is how my magic works in my setting. It's like somebody on Facebook I saw once posted, I have a low magic setting, so in order to cast a spell, every spellcaster has to roll a saving throw against their own spell DC just to cast the spell. And everyone in the comments was like, what's wrong with you? Like, who hurt you?
Why would you? Why would you? Okay, I'll just, 99 times out of 100, if a DM came up to me like that, I would either leave the campaign or just play as a fighter. Like, there's no real reason to play a spellcaster.
Well, and I think that's what he wanted.
What I actually like more is the idea of magic sort of being ever present and not necessarily, yes, difficult to do, but like, I kind of like there are old D&D settings where I don't know if this is the case anymore, where everybody can do like a little magic, where everybody has like a couple of cantrips, like one or two, and then the people who can do like big spells are really super highly revered.
There was Chris Perkins put for when D&D Next came out, way back before 5e, between 4e and 5e.
I was in that beta.
When Next came out, Chris Perkins published a little campaign Bible, which is what I base most of these campaign Bibles on, called Valerain. And it was sort of Arthurian. If you look at the map, it's just Great Britain and Ireland inverted. And there was, like, I think it was called...
This is my original continent, Westeros.
Yeah, I mean, it was... He wasn't trying to hide it either, but...
Of course. No, obviously.
But he flipped it, and... But everyone got a cantrip. You rolled on a table, and it assigned you a cantrip because of, like, a comet that passed over and, like, granted everyone powers, I think, was the deal with it. But yeah, it gave everyone a cantrip, and I did always think that was a cool... Everybody gets an extra cantrip, even if you're, like, just a fighter. Now you know, clean water or whatever, shape water.
The only caveat I would give that is maybe make it so that you can't have, like, a damaging cantrip. Like, you can't pick a damaging cantrip with your extra cantrip.
Well, there was a very specific list, and let me see if I can pull it up real fast.
Because, like, I'll be honest with you, I don't want, like, if that were to become a feature, I really like that idea, but you know that, like, the moment you put that in, someone's going to be like, well, I'll pick Booming Blade, or, like, something like that.
It is random, so it's on a D100 table.
That's a good element.
Let's see... I swear there was one in here. Night of Wild Magic. Here we go. Oh, shit. They're not even cantrips. They're spells.
Ooh. That might be harder to balance.
Yeah? One of them's Dimension Door.
Okay. Come on, Chris. I don't know. Really, Chris?
And they're at will. Jeez. Oh, no, wait. Dimension Door is once per day.
Okay, good.
And you can only transport yourself, but still.
Dimension Door at will is like a level 20 ability. Like, okay, that's a little bit of exaggeration.
And it is once a day, and you can only take yourself. But still, at first level for free.
It's a lot. That's like, oh, I can just leave any combat. That is what that is. And if you're facing, like, goblins in an open field, well, shit, you're fine.
And Marty does make a point in chat. If everyone has a damaging cantrip, it's not special. So it balances itself out. Now, granted, some cantrips are better than others. Eldritch Blast versus Create Bonfire, but
Create Bonfire is low-key actually insanely good.
Yeah,
just because of its weirdly specific, like...
It's no Eldritch Blast.
It's true. You can't, like, pew, 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 pew.
People take one level in Warlock just to get it.
Oh, Soup actually has a good idea. Like, ancestral spells. What if magic was like cooking? Like, everyone can do it. Grandma passes down her spellbook that's been in the family for generations. Everyone can technically do it, just some people really shouldn't. Some people are good at certain types, and some people are chefs. Wait a second, that's Ratatouille with magic.
Well, I mean, it's just cooking with magic, though. I mean...
Yeah.
Yes, no, but, like, specifically, anyone can cook is... I'm mad now. I'm gonna stop talking.
Don't bring up Ratatouille. Marty hates Ratatouille.
I don't know. I actually really like that movie. I just thought it was funny, but...
Okay. So, where do we... And if we just want to continue to just kind of broadly pontificate on campaign settings and what we like, that's perfectly fine.
That's fun.
But... do we want to kind of, from what we're talking about, do we want to pick something in there? Even if we just create a list of, this is what I would want in a fantasy setting, if high fantasy, high magic, low fantasy, high magic, high fantasy, low magic, which is just Tolkien. But, yeah, it's a...
What's the difference between low fantasy and high fantasy? I've never quite understood that.
So high fantasy is Tolkien. There's a war for the fate of good and evil. It's very... Most of what we play on this channel, I would consider high fantasy. It's... Yeah, the fate of the world is at stake. I spelled Star Chasers, I guess, isn't quite high fantasy, but it's high science fantasy.
Stars is in it. So yeah.
So yeah, that's how I always think. It's Lord of the Rings versus I can never think of a good. Oh, Conan. Conan is fighting a dude. He's fighting a dude he's mad at. It's probably the governor or something. You taxed his skulls. What the hell, man?
But somewhere in that general vicinity, probably in like a cave that you'll see once a season, is like a witch or something.
Well, sure, but you can have high fantasy or high magic, low fantasy. Mm-hmm. I think it's rare, but you can. And Tolkien is an example of low magic, high fantasy. One dude can cast spells, and he knows like 2. It's like light and light. He knows 2 spells. He knows 1 spell. Gandalf uses a sword most of the time.
It's true.
Like,
he's an Eldritch Knight. He's not a
yeah. He is. Well, and technically he's an angel or whatever. But
he has proficiency in riding and martial weapons. That's not a wizard.
Yeah, he's a war leader or whatever. He cast Dispel Magic on Theoden King. Theoden King. That's
so
it.
He's probably like a bard or something.
That's it. He's got light and Dispel Magic.
Smoke pipe.
Yeah, and he's got Shape Smoke. That's so useful. I love Gandalf, but he's not a very strong wizard. He's probably a level 1 wizard, like level 15 fighter. Can he cast fireworks, or did he just light the fuse 15 minutes ago? And he's just like, oh, they're gonna love this, stupid hobbits.
Well, yeah, he didn't cast them because didn't Merry and Pippin like set them off early anyway?
Yeah, he has.
The movie.
No, he has proper he has proper fireworks. There is the scene in the movie where he's riding the cart away from the Hobbit children, and then they all seemingly randomly go off, and Gandalf kind of smiles. But yeah, he probably just lit them. Like, he's got a constantly smoking pipe. There we go. Gandalf's great. I can't remember what my point was. Oh, high fantasy versus low fantasy. And then high magic is the Forgotten Realms versus low magic, Tolkien.
Forgotten Realms is high fantasy, high magic.
Yes, 1,000%. There's a world-ending catastrophe every 5 minutes.
It's funny to think that, like, okay, Task Force Unlikely is, like, probably the 30th strongest adventuring party, like, in their neighborhood.
Yeah, in Waterdeep, for sure. Like,
that might even be a stretch. There's a lot of adventuring parties in Waterdeep.
Well, a lot of them get run out of town. You guys keep it on the down low, for the most part.
We also have a legitimate business as a front. I mean, an actual legitimate business. Presumably currently being run by a shirtless tiefling and a mule.
I don't see the problem.
Yeah.
Birdsong has my vote.
Birdsong for president. Let's make it happen.
Birdsong
for trending, people.
Birdsong for Open Lord of Waterdeep. What has Laurel Silverhand done for you lately?
Look,
the people.
Here's the thing. Birdsong for Masked Lord of Waterdeep. Nobody will know they're a mule.
Well...
No one will figure it out ever. You literally cannot figure it out if they have a mask.
Yeah, I know. They still are human shaped.
No,
though.
not possible. You're never gonna figure it out. It's completely indecipherable. Speaking of mules are kind of like camels, and camels live in the desert, and I think it should be a desert setting. But it can be a lively desert. I don't want it to be like friggin', oh, I've been wandering for 40 days and 40 nights, and I've started hallucinating things. No, it's like, there's cities and shit. I'm thinking more like Calimport than the middle of the summer.
Well, I thought the new Aladdin remake was pretty good. And despite it not looking like it would be good, I thought it was pretty okay. And Agrabah in it is a pretty cool setting.
Agrabah would be a great D&D setting, though.
Well, and speaking of wizards, Jafar just casts D&D spells. Like, he casts Enlarge, Reduce, Charm Person. That's pretty much it. Polymorph. Someone breaks his concentration at some point, and he loses the spell.
Are you suggesting we create the Aladdin Dread Realm?
Well, we certainly could. Where Jafar isn't tricked by an idiot and doesn't make himself a genie. Although in the live-action remake, his wish is just worded very poorly. And
I like that better, actually. Also, given that the genie likes Aladdin, it makes sense that he would interpret... Because genies have basically full freedom to interpret wishes in such a way that fucks over the people that...
1,000%. That's just not in the... It is in the movie. He referenced... Earlier in the movie, Genie tells him, be careful how you word things. I can interpret them however. But in the cartoon, he just does... They're not trying to trick little kids.
I think that's just because he likes Aladdin, though. I feel like that is an important part of that equation.
Sure, but he also... I don't know. I like genies who trick.
He's compelled by magic to do what the person who's holding the lamp says.
That's true.
He may like another person, but if the guy holding the lamp says, kill that guy, he's like, gotta do it.
Yeah.
That's the one problem with, they say, infinite cosmic powers, itty bitty living space. It's like you kind of stuck in the lamp there.
It's true. No, I do like... Look, any setting that has genies, I like the idea of the genies having the freedom to, like, well, you didn't specify, so sorry, but your head has to blow up. It's... You said you wanted your social media profile to blow up, so I put a bomb in your computer.
Yeah, that's also the movie Bedazzled, starring Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley, and the remake of the movie Bedazzled starring two old people that I can't remember. One of them was almost certainly a drunk. What was the other thing I watched recently that had a desert in it? Prince of Egypt, which is a good movie.
That's an amazing movie.
And has great songs, and is another cool desert setting. I mean, it's Egypt, but...
Just like a real place, though.
I mean, the desert is a real place,
yes,
man.
Yeah, but
Welcome
it's...
to Egypt, where it's a real place.
It's the beginning of the song from Aladdin. Welcome to Egypt. It's totally real. No.
Egypt, Rabat.
Although they did change some of the words in that to make it less offensive. I've just never seen Bedazzled, Marty. I'm sorry. Either of them. Okay, or Bedeviled, whatever it's called. It's got Elizabeth Hurley in it, who's in the Teen Titan or the Runaway show as Morgan Le Fay. I know too much about things I've never seen.
Liz, what kind of setting are you thinking?
Yeah.
Hmm?
I asked what kind of setting you're thinking.
The other thing is, it doesn't have to be a mono biome. It's not a Star Wars planet. It can be, there's a desert over here, and then there's this over here, and that over there. And I'll write down desert, because we've talked about desert.
I kind of forced that in, and I feel bad now.
Biodiversity is key, so we're gonna get to it eventually.
Yeah, we gotta go through the desert world, the grassland, the fire level, and then eventually we'll get to the boss.
Yeah. That's how Pokemon works, so that's how everything works.
I was thinking Mario, but yeah, Pokemon too. And Zelda. Most video games, actually.
Mm-hmm.
The desert level is always a good one, though.
The water temple is for assholes, I guess. It's for assholes, or it was built by assholes?
It was built by people who had the power to swim completely freely. And look, if you could swim completely freely in that game, the water temple would be fine. But it sucks.
I always thought
And
because they fixed this in the 3DS re-release, is there's a quick select button for your boots, so you don't have to go into menus every time, and that makes it much better.
tap the boots button.
Yeah. It's still annoying, but it's better. It's not that it's no one. That's no one's favorite temple.
Put in all caps, no water temple.
Although when I played that game for the first time, because I played it on some crappy old tube TV, my least favorite temple was the Shadow Temple because I couldn't
agree.
see anything.
Shadow Temple, specifically because of how shitty lighting is. Sucked.
I had to call Navi just to see anything. Then I figured out I could turn up the brightness on my TV, but it was a knob because I'm old. Okay.
Good game. Those 2 levels fucking sucked.
Speaking of deserts, the Spirit Temple is cool though.
The Spirit Temple is good, and you get the Mirror Shield there. One of the best power-ups in any game ever, in my opinion.
Okay. What are you? Okay. High magic, I think we've established.
Magic, good.
Magic equal good.
Thumbs up emoji.
Although Marty, I think it was Marty in chat, said earlier, the benefit of a low magic setting is Gandalf and Jafar are like gods at 2nd level. You know, I know light and dispel magic. You all better worship me. Saruman at least knows like telekinesis.
It's true, but look, counterpoint to that is that you gotta remember that in most normal D&D settings, the party are basically gods. Like, a level 5 fighter, if he wanted to, could ransack a small village on his own. Like...
I mean, yes and no. It depends. If there's like 5 guards, they might overwhelm him if they roll lucky. If they get lucky, but yeah, no, but yeah, adventuring parties in general, they can just walk all over townspeople, and some of them do, and I find that gross. But luckily, we don't have any of those players.
It's a play style.
It's certainly a play style.
Also one that you should not do unless you're like, the campaign setting is, oh, this is an evil party. Otherwise, no, don't do that.
Yeah, NPCs are people too, and the DM is playing them, so be nice. I mean, unless the NPC is a jerk, but just don't be jerks to townspeople. Dim Weaver has an arc.
It's true, he does. I'm sorry, Dim. He does have an arc. Even though the end of that arc might be getting eaten by Tiamat, spoiler.
It's not his fault. Okay.
I'm just glad that Accurate John got brought back.
He's got more dialogue than he ever had in Strike Team Beta.
We gotta put him in this campaign somewhere, too. In this setting.
It's not his fault. How dare you? Okay, let's see. So, one of the places would be a desert. One of the places.
I think I'm frozen on stream. I didn't even...
You are.
Oh,
You've been kind of...
I'm frozen and it looks like I'm very afraid of something.
There's a ghost outside, Daniel.
Well, funnily enough, it froze when I was looking out my window. So maybe there is a ghost
Maybe
outside.
there is a ghost outside. You've been... Oh, wrong button.
Or maybe I'm just deprived of NBA and I've been, like, looking at the guy across the street who owns a basketball net.
Okay, so, let's see. One of the places is a desert, biodiversity is key, high magic, magic equal good.
All the key points.
This is, every fantasy setting. But I like where we're going with this.
I don't know, does Middle Earth have a desert?
Well, see,
I'm sure it does.
Technically, it does.
The type of feeling that... I don't know if you guys have played Shadows of Mordor.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the feel of that game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just, like, what it felt like to sort of go through those areas. I loved that so much. And it's sort of like, to me, that has the same advantages as like a desert in a way. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you mean like Mordor is kind of desolate and lava-y. Yeah, it feels very desert.
Yeah,
That's...
and it still has, old castles and ruins and such. I love that game.
Yeah, Marty said in chat, Middle-earth does have a desert. All the evil, dark-skinned people come from there, and that's what I was afraid of.
I didn't want to say it.
It has not aged well, as Marty also says in chat. Look, Tolkien was
Catholic.
Wow.
See, I'll give.
And I can say that because I am Catholic.
No, I just
I'll
this is
give.
shorthand for racist. He's a Catholic. Wait.
Oh my god.
No.
Oh, we're gonna get banned from Twitch. Whatever.
I mean,
Like 10 people watch us,
I
Dan.
prefer not. Yeah, nobody's flagging us.
No, it is true. Although to Tolkien's credit, he did go back on it and say, "Oh yeah, orcs can get into heaven." It's just his books didn't really have any examples of orcs that did that.
And to be fair, the orcs weren't technically the bad people. The bad people were all like the guys with the elephants who are also, evil dark-skinned people.
Yeah. Yeah, the orcs are just being manipulated by Saruman. It's not their fault.
I have a hot take. I like Lord of the Rings orcs a lot more than D&D orcs. Because this sort of still kind of in Lord of the Rings, they're sort of corrupted elves, I think is the conceit of that. So they still build these like giant structures and castles and sometimes even kingdoms, but they're kind of like twisted and dark, and I like that a lot more than just they're sitting around a campfire picking their teeth with bones.
I mean, they do that too.
Well,
meat's back on the menu, boys.
Yep.
Look. Okay, you got a point. I can't argue with that.
Although I think that's technically a goblin, but they're all the same. Urukai and orcs. And...
There's orcs, they're Urukai.
Well, and in old editions of D&D, orcs were goblinoids. So...
I do like, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. I was going to start talking about Orogs, but...
Talk about whatever you want. Let me see if I can find a picture of Scro.
Orogs in D&D in the Forgotten Realms setting, they're part ogre. They're like the leaders of orcs, and they are cool, and I like them.
No, the orc is the one who says that about the goblin. I thought the goblins were saying it about the halflings, no? Hobbitses? Sorry, hobbitses.
The royalty-free, smaller-sized individuals.
I think it was that the goblin was trying to kill Merry and Pippin, but then the orc killed the goblin, and then he said meat's back on the menu, and they all ate the goblin.
Okay.
That was the order of it.
Wait, why would the orcs kill the goblin?
Because they were supposed to take Merry and Pippin to Sauron, or Sauron, I forgot which. And the goblin was like, nah, let me just murder them and eat them because we haven't had any eaten days. And the orc who has better priorities was like, no, don't do that or I'll kill you. And the goblin didn't listen and he got...
And then they ate the goblin. Well, you know what? Live by the eating people, die by the eating people.
Exactly.
Can't say they didn't have it coming. I have to rewatch Lord of the Rings. It's been a while.
Me too.
They're still on TV like all the time.
Yeah, well, I own the
I
one.
have anything else to do
DVD
right
too. Yeah, we used to watch it every New Year's, but that has not been true for a couple years now. Okay. Look, I'll make knockoff Mordor because I've been watching a lot of Escape from the Bloodkeep. I'll do it.
I'm down to do a bit of knockoff Mordor.
Because I also like those video games, and they are kind of, but they aren't certainly desolate. Like it's not.
See, I've never saw
Even
them as
the-
desolate because I kind of saw the orcs as being sort of part of the environment. There's always orcs around, and they're always doing something.
Yeah, but it's.
But are they did the orcs actually build it, or did they just take it over from like wherever they killed for it?
Yeah,
That
see,
was kind of the
Built
thing.
it, they took it over and then rebuilt parts of it to be to their liking.
Yeah, because in the second one,
They had queer eye for the orc guy.
well, hold on. That's an interesting concept. Let me write that down.
Look, I actually like here's the thing. If we want to drop people into a setting where it's like you are the leader of a war band and you're kind of in like a power struggle or in a place that you've already conquered. I actually really like that idea. And look, part of that would need to be you gotta have a bitchin' castle. You gotta have good hygiene. You gotta have a good hairstyle.
Why?
I'm trying to feed into your idea and I don't know how.
I wear the head of a slain enemy, and they had a good hairstyle. I mean, it's decaying slightly, but
True.
it looks
Wait,
nice.
it's like it's the end of Escape from Bloodkeep. Eventually, everyone gets together and has like a friendship hug, even though they're all villains. Or did we not watch that episode?
No, sorry, I was reading chat. No, yeah, that. Oh my god, yeah, friendship hug. That episode was so wholesome for how evil everyone is. Marty in chat says a land where evil already won like 20 years ago.
I don't like. I like lands where evil won and everything is kind of shitty, but where it's not an apocalypse. I don't like full. We don't have to. You don't have to go full apocalypse for that. You can go Shadows of Mordor. You can go Dark Sun.
Well, see, I would say Dark Sun is straight on apocalypse.
Okay,
If you want to take it like, you can always take a note from Star Trek where they had their mirror universe, where it was just like humanity had its big war, and then instead of learning to, stop fighting and get their shit together and, start working together, they decided no. They became the Terran Empire, and then started going off into like these, murder, kill, death type of thing. So it doesn't have to be an apocalypse. It just has to be like that something really bad happened, and they learned all the wrong lessons.
Maybe it's a place that was recently invaded, and the invasion was repelled, but the invasion kind of destroyed all sort of order and structure in that area, and yeah, all the people learned the wrong lessons from it. Mordor has acid rain. Oh my god, it does.
Okay. So yeah, but yeah, like even if the bad guys won, that doesn't mean they immediately nuked everything. It's what is an evil empire look like running a world for 15, 20, 100 years? And I mean, I think a very good example of that, for the most part, is Avatar: The Last Airbender. The Fire Nation won. Like, they're in charge, and they're not nice. But the world isn't destroyed. The Earth Kingdom still is the Earth Kingdom. The Water Tribes are still mostly independent. But the Fire Nation is still ultimately sort of in charge.
They still, like, won. Yeah, no, but, like, life goes on.
Yeah,
So,
and... Go ahead.
Look, the whoever invades the whoever, whether or not, they're under the control of a centralized authority, or they've kind of let that particular province descend into anarchy. And I guess that could be the different biomes thing, is like there's an area obviously that would be hard to control because of its hostile environment. And maybe that area is
a desert.
Yeah, or like knock off Mordor, essentially.
Yeah, or a jungle.
Yeah.
an Arctic region.
We can compromise and go scrublands, maybe.
Well, as soon as you said desert, but not like full on all desert, the first place I did think of was Australia. Australia's got a big bit in the middle that's kind of scrubland and desert and hard to live in, but people do. And then, the outskirts are where cities are.
No, you know what? If the Empire is having trouble holding on to Australia, that could be a really good setting for a campaign. As you would have the sort of imperial core that is kind of an evil empire, and you would have Australia, which is not going so great. And it doesn't have to be an island, but you get what I'm saying, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Marty has actually made a suggestion that a number of evil lieutenants have kind of carved up the map. Some of them are competent rulers, some of them are incredibly overbearing ones, and some of them just kind of let their realms descend into chaos and don't really give a shit.
That could work too.
Yeah, I do kind of like that.
Is a smart idea. And I really do like the idea of hypothetical adventuring parties being able to engage in the power struggles in these regions.
Well, and then it adds an interesting counterbalance because let's say you're a level 3 adventurer and your party starts in region A, which is run by Corporal Moron, and you overthrow Corporal Moron because he's an idiot and he's clearly not doing what's good for the people, and now you're level 5. And you're like, well, that guy was also part of the evil empire, let's go get him, and he's Corporal slightly less moron, and you kill him, and you're like, okay, well, now we're stretched a little thin, but...
He's Sergeant Normie.
Yeah, and now you're level 7, and now there's hyper-competent Darth Vader type over there, and you're like, well... And he's evil, but he's running things okay, and we're already stretched thin here, so you have the... it's... Ultimately, I think that's what the new Star Wars movies were trying to say. It's that just because you win doesn't mean you won.
No, yeah, and I would say I think you definitely want, if anything, to have sort of a smaller partition of these provinces, so that if one or two of the provinces kind of get overrun or there's a big power shift there, low-key, the people higher up probably don't care that much.
Okay.
Look, the King of France is not going to care that much if the County of Orleans, gets a new ruler or whatever. That's a weird example.
If they're related to each other, he would.
As long as they're not English.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, don't ask about what happened to Anjou then. But no, it's if something like that were to happen, you would probably want it so that the players could not necessarily take control even, and obviously there would be. When I think of sort of gaining power, I think of in a sort of more organized area that would manifest as playing the political game, doing diplomacy with various nobles, trying to find the least bad actors in certain situations. In a place run by Horty McEvil Chaos Face, it would really just be getting a large enough group of guys to go and beat up another large group of guys, and then getting whatever, etc., etc. Getting progressively larger groups of guys to go beat each other up.
Or you can join in the evil McStupid guy's army and then just take it over from the inside.
Yeah, like Shadows of Mordor.
Yeah.
And I think the nice variance. I think part of the benefit of getting sort of the worldwide, or not worldwide, but maybe continent or semi-continental wide conquest by an evil empire, the nice thing that setting creates is it's a very varied region, but still has connecting tissue. It's not out of the question that someone from one part of the empire would be sent to another part of the empire.
No, but because even if you look at, Eurasia through Africa, they're all connected, and it's all very different stuff. North America to South America, it's hard to traverse all the way through, but you can, and they're very different. It's a gradient, you know.
Yeah, and look, hypothetically, I'm just gonna sort of throw this out there. If someone controlled like everywhere between Ethiopia and Libya, it's not out of the like if there was an empire there, it's not out of the question that someone from Ethiopia would go to Libya or vice versa. And essentially, I like the idea of a fantasy setting having a very wide group of, like, still connected, but, like, you know, Liz said, the biodiversity is important.
Well, and not to, pardon me, not to criticize Wizards of the Coast right now, but I think that's the part of the problem with the Forgotten Realms. It's not that it doesn't have that, because it does. It's that they don't leave the Sword Coast.
But have you considered slightly further south on the Sword Coast?
Well, we're doing it. We moved to Baldur's Gate. We're getting there.
Eventually you'll get that Kalimport expansion. We know you want it.
But someone did make a good point of that, is that they are trying to just centralize everything. So if you are new, you don't have to learn a lot.
I get that, but I want to go to Kalimport. I really, really want to go to Kalimport. It's so much fun. There's genies.
I mean, I still hold out hope that they'll publish a more expansive Forgotten Realms book and then a planes hopping book. So.
Oh, Marty's already planning out the campaign.
I know.
Marty is by the end of this, Marty is going to be just the final boss.
Okay, so do we like the idea of it... Or messages below scrolling. Do we like the idea of it kind of being the evil Empire won X amount of years ago? X amount of years ago, and the good guys are... Look, we don't have to do anything. Marty just said he's going to do it, so...
Look, you know what, Marty? Do you want to hop in this call? We'd be glad to have you. Although we might have to have you just on voice.
Making new boxes.
Well, I'd have to reopen GIMP, and I could just put him in the corner. Okay. Do we like this idea though of it being the bad guys won? Gorgosh won 20 years ago, 50 years ago.
Between 20 and 50 is good, because I think on the low end of that, you have people who fought in the First War still being alive, and on the tail end of that, you have people being born who don't even remember it.
Liz?
Yeah, that sounds good.
That's Star Wars. Star Wars is
basically Star Wars.
20 years is how long between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope.
Yeah, and everyone completely forgot about everything that happened in Revenge of the Sith. Like, there was a Clone Wars. It's like, yeah, Luke, you're like 20.
Well, he says you fought in the Clone Wars, so that does imply he might know what they are.
Let's go like 35 years then.
Then that's between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, where everyone forgot who Luke Skywalker.
Look, nobody in the Star Wars universe can read, okay? That's been established.
Yeah, they communicate through jizz music, which is a real thing.
It is. It is what they're playing in the cantina. It is what my wife and I walked out of our wedding to.
That's all.
I mean, my cousin and her husband walked into the Imperial March theme for her wedding reception, so I'm not one to talk.
Let's see. 20 years ago, the evil, no good, pretty mean.
May I suggest turning that 20 into a 35 or so?
Yeah, and I was about to say this as well, but Marty points out, Han Solo's 35 in that movie. He should know what a Jedi is.
That's a very good point. He would have been 15.
He would have been
That's
15. And
Yeah.
he's from Corellia, which is a fairly important planet. Like,
I think the hard part of this is like striking the balance between there are some people who don't remember it at all, and there's some people who like fought in the war.
well, the other thing to consider in a fantasy setting is elves live 1,000 years.
That's true, actually. So, for like if a dwarf is talking about the war, it's like, oh yeah, it was last week, basically.
Yeah, so what you could do is you could have, the elves and dwarves and the other long-lived races, they're the ones who remember. And humans are just like, this is how it's always been, old man, deal with it.
Well, that would mean extending it to like 50 years, though.
At least. Even probably 100 years.
I actually prefer like between 20 and 50 rather than going like 100. Just
I'm trying to remember how long the Lord Ruler from Mistborn, he's been in charge and evil for like 1,000 years.
Yeah, I think it was 1,000.
Yeah.
I like the idea of there being people like, because let's say you set it at 30 years. That means there's adults who are like 25 who are maybe even enlisted in the Empire's army, not really knowing the full scale of the horrors that it inflicted, now sort of who don't remember the initial war. There's also people who are like 50 who maybe even fought against the Empire and could still, be player characters. Like, they're not 120-year-old people who are, oh, I'm gonna break my hip, but I'll adventure. Although that would be a fun character, actually.
If it's the evil empire who won, though, you could still have people who are like in resistances. Like when Andy said Mistborn, the guy has been around for 1,000 years, but he's been putting down like uprising after uprising for 1,000 years. So there's still people going on being like, this used to be different, man. Everything's different. We could make it better if we just kill this one guy. And then you can have that still. You can have people who are like in an older uprising still be there. And you can still have elves and dwarves who are like, yeah, what used to be here? Trees. Trees were cool.
Well, the dwarves wouldn't miss trees, but the elves would.
So you can still have like all those, hardened veterans, but they just have to be from like a different source than what we're used to.
So
yeah,
would that make it so like 50 years then in that case?
50 to 100, I would say.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards the longer end just because I do, and Soup just said it in chat as well. I do like that the veterans who aren't resistance fighters are elves and dwarves and gnomes and stuff who are just like, it creates a divide where humans are just, obviously not all humans, but humans are, humanity is complacent because this is how it's always been. It's fine. It's not great, but it's okay. And then, of course, obviously you have resistance fighters from that, just like in Star Wars or Mistborn. Or,
so are we thinking like 50 or...
I'm thinking like 75 to 100, but I mean, I can be talked off of that.
I was sort of more on the side of 50 to 20, but I'm basically saying like, okay, clearly I've been outvoted, and I understand it. This is a collaborative process.
It also gives like the elves something to do, because like a lot of elves in fantasy are just kind of off on the sidelines, being elves, not doing much. But here, if they're like part of the resistance, then they can be like, cool, badass elves and not like, okay, you're just gonna sit over there?
Just waiting to sail on a boat for some reason. Just leave.
Yeah.
Plus, like, the dwarves, it's like, oh, you want to conquer us? Good fucking luck. We live in the mountains.
Yeah, they can just go underground. Okay, cool. Locked door.
We're gonna dig deeper. Good fucking luck. And then that sort of creates two different, like, resistance factions in a way.
Well, and then it creates, tension between all of the elves who were like, fuck this, and the dwarves who were like, just leave. Just go away.
Turtle. We're gonna turtle. setting, but like part of a setting that could be slotted into that campaign if we're going to take the dwarves in that direction.
Sorry, say that again. The first little bit cut off.
I have basically part of a setting that could be slotted into this campaign if that is the direction we're taking the dwarves in. Because one of my characters a long time ago was basically there was like a race of dwarves living on an icy mountain called Ismar, because that is literally, if you go to the Forgotten Realms translation, Is ice and Mar is mountain. And they have a mountain fortress. And they all live on one icy mountain and don't like people treading on their mountain. I have a whole write-up for this, but I feel like it's a lot.
Well, I mean, if we flesh this out more, we can add that. But right now, it is very much just... I mean, Corporal Moron is one of our bullet points.
We need to, like, change that wording slightly, but still have him in the game.
Just put an apostrophe in the middle of his name.
Ooh, there
fine.
we go.
Moron.
I did know someone with the last name Moran. That's close.
Foreign.
Corporal Mo Ron. It's an ancestral name. Okay. Do we want a... Okay, well, here is, and this is throwing a not necessarily a spanner in the works, but this is throwing an idea out there. Alternatively, dwarves or elves or dragonborn could be the evil empire, and they are just perfectly content to... We'll just wait 100 years until all you stupid humans die, and then we're fine, everyone.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's an interesting proposition.
And granted, it's a little bit what I have in one of my other homebrews, where, yeah, the elves are winning a war of attrition because you'll all die. We don't care.
Yeah, elves don't suffer maladies from old age.
We're totes cool in our trees. Deal with it.
Have fun dying. You didn't even go underground like the dwarves did. You just kind of stood there.
Do you want maybe to do a mix of it? Like, we'll get all those sub races involved, and it's like, oh, maybe all the high elves are snooty assholes, and then all the drow are actually good guys. They're like, got really annoyed that the dwarves were like, came into their space. And like, what the heck? We live on the ground too. Why are you here?
Oh, man.
The elves ran over. It's like we didn't really have much of a choice in the matter, and then it's like, well, fuck you, and then there's war underground too.
I do, and I typically... This is usually my headcanon for dwarves, is they just keep moving into places that people are already, and then they beat them, and they're like, well, the orcs were aggressive. And it's like, you came into their house, dude. Like,
look,
this is our mountain. You have underneath. You need the top of it, too. We do. Cool? Thanks.
Look, there's nobody living in that volcano, I swear. Just some fire giants, but whatever. Maybe a red dragon. It's not a big deal.
This is my summer mountain, says Marty and Chad. Okay. Do we want to say elves or the Empire who won?
Yes.
And I like Liz's idea that every kind of sub-race then has a job. It's the wood elves are in the woods... and if we wanted to make drow evil, and not in the way they are portrayed as evil in most settings, but if we wanted to lump them in with the Empire, it's they are there to eradicate dwarves from underground, if we wanted to. But I also like the idea that drow are like, oh, fuck this, we're going underground.
I also have sort of a... I think there could be a conflict, another sort of side conflict that kind of bubbles up and then flares down. It's not the same as the Empire, but the war for livable locations underground could be going on between dwarves and drow, not necessarily because they have any big enmity towards one another, just because, okay, well, fuck, if we want to be free from the giant empire above us, gonna fucking have to fight over what's left.
Yeah, it is a war of resources, not of...
Yeah, it's like there's no like real animosity or ideology, and there's, periods of peace and probably even some towns where they sort of commingle and coexist, but...
Although also saying this aloud, saying all of this aloud, this is a little Elder Scrolls.
It is very Elder Scrolls.
It's not
I haven't played the game, so I don't have to deal with it.
So, you know what? I'm in the clear. Yeah, but in Skyrim, the timeline has moved forward to where the High Elves kind of took over everything, and they're just like, yes, you can keep your empire, but he's not a god. That's blasphemous. It's like, okay, whatever. Exactly. Stupid elves. And all the elves are weird in that, and dark elves are the best.
I like to imagine that the sort of drow dark elf or drow dwarf relations are probably very mixed in this setting. Like, they're not universally good or universally bad, but there is tension because of limited resources.
Yeah, and Marty and Soup are saying some interesting things in chat. Marty's saying, straight up, flip the traditionally good races to be evil, and the traditionally evil races are good. The orcs are freedom fighters. Drow are the good elves. Maybe even Duergar are the good dwarves. Oh, but then also Soup is saying in here, drow hiding with the dwarves, or drow even protecting the dwarves, hiding them from the other elves. So, like, there are no dwarves down here. Go, brothers. Back to the surface. You fuckwits.
No dwarves here. If it could be then that the dwarves were one of, like, the major conquest targets in the big Elven Wars of Expansion. Maybe they didn't like that the dwarves were fucking mining too much or whatever. They were making a big racket.
They dug too deep and awakened something bad. And elves were like, oh, well, you guys gotta die.
Always, like, digging too deep to awaken something bad.
It's like, we can handle it. We got, oh, right, you're invading already. Okay, then. And sort of... once those fell, it's like they retreated deep underground. And I also like the idea, there could be, like, remnants or dwarven kingdoms that are still existing, like, within the borders of the Empire, but are basically surrounded, and are, like, gradually becoming weaker.
Yeah, and to go back to the Avatar kind of comparison for a minute. In Avatar, there are Earth Kingdom, villages that are just Earth Kingdom. They're just sort of slowly being eroded by the Fire Nation. Mm-hmm. But also, and I think it was Daniel who said this, that elves might be mad at dwarves for manufacturing, which kind of ties back into the Tolkien, where, Saruman and his forces and Sauron are metaphors for industrialization, and Tolkien hated that, even though he hates analogies or metaphors or whatever that stupid story is. That's clearly a metaphor, John.
Maybe the reason, one of the reasonings for... Well, see, though, here's the thing. The elves have to, if they're going to have this massive empire, have to actually be in some way, like, they would have to at least be a little bit evil. I don't think there's ever been, like, a swell guy who's just decided to start an empire for the hell of it, because the whole thing about having an empire is it kind of necessitates a lot of, like, murder. That's kind of baked into the empire pie. The empire.
We're not using that as a name, by the way, but I like where your head's at. But no, yeah, but to their point of view, they are not evil, and I think that is always important in villains.
Well, of course.
What if
that they don't see themselves as evil, Liz?
What if instead of, like, having the elves, maybe it's instead of the elves just go evil, it's that they saw the sort of industrialization that was going on and just decided to act first and
a preemptive strike.
Yeah, a preemptive strike, and then that way, like, maybe not, like, maybe they got a bunch of humans to help them, and that's why humanity was kind of cool with it or something like that. So it's like maybe the elves aren't like the whole of the empire, but they just like
It's
use certain things to like go bad, and like
a mixture.
there are certain sections taken over by elves that are just like big nature forests and things like that.
A mixture of sort of elves and humans. My thinking was that the catalyst for this war was, okay, the dwarves invented gunpowder. The dwarves probably would still be kind of isolationist in this setting, so they probably didn't have any real intention of using it in any real capacity. But in
Or
order to prevent it from being proliferated, the elves invaded, essentially. And the catalyst could have been the invention of gunpowder or something like that.
Yeah, and to kind of to piggyback on some of these ideas and what Marty is saying is chat is, yeah, if elves convince humans the dwarves are coming for your land, we need to stop them now. And then after the dwarves are taken out, the elves say, oh, by the way, architecture is violence and we're going to raise all your cities because nature is the only true form. And all the humans were like, we didn't sign up for that. And the elves are like, well, who will you turn to? The dwarves? Haha, losers. And then you set the cities on fire.
and I guess the drow who were like living underground are like, oh no, you know what's nice? You know, being able to see and not dying. They sided with the dwarves and were like, why are you being dicks about it?
No, it's... Yeah, not dying is real nice. I don't know if I like the idea of going really ham on the sort of nature triumphs overall thing. I'm kind of mixed on it. I could be convinced.
Well, it's not so much nature triumphs overall. It's that eco-terrorism, even though, you know, in the right place, is not a very good idea when you're trying to make a point about nature being good.
Right. It's the poison ivy mentality. It's what you're saying isn't bad. The way you're going about it is bad.
When you start murdering people, then we may need to sit down and have a talk
Yeah.
about branding.
Mm-hmm. No, well... No, I see where you're going with this.
And then, of course, there's always like the idea that, you know, they also unleashed the orcs. So there's a part of the empire that's just like completely wasteland because the elves, you know, were like, well, we'll just release a bunch of people for no reason because they'll just destroy everything, and then 200 years from now, nature comes back anyway.
Yeah, like, I guess sort of the
Oh.
that, or there could be a kind of hypocrisy element where really it was just, at the end of the day, a justification for, oh, we're going to fucking take all your stuff. Where really the kind of message to the masses is we need to protect the environment. The real thing is we're going to kill those people and take their stuff.
Basically.
Oh, sure. All of this can be hiding.
Elves don't use guns, they use magic guns. Totally different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Soup and Chat also is saying instead of nature versus architecture, you could do magic versus industrialization.
I
Magic,
like the magic versus industrialization angle a lot.
yeah,
more.
magic nourishes the land. What you're doing to replicate its effects is destroying it.
Whether or not that's actually true.
It's just I don't want to have to learn something new.
It's exactly.
Trying to type on a keyboard.
And, you know,
how does Zoom work?
I'm always thinking about, you know, the political messaging of everything, and kill a bunch of people
Whoa.
to save the environment.
Keep politics
when
out my
the
D&D.
environment is threatened.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, my point is, I like the way this is going now a little more because it's like, okay, maybe to solve environmental problems, the best solution is not killing a bunch of people. That's a good message.
Basically.
Yeah,
And then you do have the people who actually believe in it, and then there's the people who are like, I'm just in it because I really wanted this guy's stuff, and then this was an easy app.
Yeah, no, I think that I also like that because it means that you could still have elf player characters that are not evil, and I think probably the majority of the elf population would either believe that they're protecting the environment, not necessarily being innocent, but sort of like tacitly ignoring all of the evil shit that's going on.
Yeah, well, so a couple things I want to say. The other thing about having like elves have different motives as a culture for the war, dwarves are often also regarded as very powerful magical smiths. And if they're just like, how dare you industrialize, we'll take all your magic items, though. You can do that. And then, two, for elf player characters, Luke Skywalker is going to join the Empire at the beginning of A New Hope. He says he's going to become a TIE fighter pilot. Like, yeah, if this is all they've ever known, until someone points out, hey, isn't this bad? Most elves are going to be like, yeah, you join the army.
Yeah, exactly. Most elves are never going to see an obliterated dwarven settlement.
Yeah.
Like,
and then...
At least not until they've already sort of been through the training and the propaganda.
Some old wizard shows up, hands you some magic sword, and says, your dad totally wanted you to have this. I didn't cut him in half. My name's Obi-Wan.
Or you could be Finn from The Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he went through all this training and brainwashing, and then he finally gets on the battlefield, and his buddy dies. And oh my god, my buddy died. This is like a real thing that happened.
I didn't think people died in war. Oh my god. That's actually... I'm being coy, but that's like a very powerful moment. I really like that movie.
Yeah, too bad they messed up his character arc.
Yeah, what character arc?
The one that they kind of just threw out that was going to be a character arc and then wasn't.
The one I made up of my head.
There we go. He mostly just screams Rey over and over again.
I mean, at least in The Last Jedi, he got to make a friend, and then he, realized that there are other people in the galaxy besides him and Rey, and then The Force Awakens,
whatever that movie, The Rise of Skywalker, that's what it's called. Like, what is that movie called?
I didn't see Rise of Skywalker. I kind of made it up instead of going to see it.
I saw it opening day. I did not see it again. My friend wanted me to go see it.
I was supposed to take my dad to go see that, and I never did. It just made me sad. It just made me real bummed.
I actually am really liking this campaign idea now. That's partially because I'm a big dwarf fanboy. And I have so many characters that would work just absolutely great in this. Only half of them are dwarves.
And you figure, like, even a druid would be good to play in this campaign, too, because you have all the different sort of nature takes on it. Like, you can have the druid who's, like, just straight up, nature is good and all that stuff, and we need to protect it at all costs. But you also have, like, that fire druid or that spore druid. It's like, no, sometimes you gotta let things die to make them better again.
Yeah, and it kind of creates an interesting inversion of some of these character tropes. I don't know. Maybe I'm just No, I really like that idea. I just because I think it does allow you to have very varied motivations among player character races.
There were two things I wanted to say. One, Liz said this a couple minutes ago, and I really liked it. The idea that orcs were weapons that the elves unleashed, because again, that's very Tolkien. The orcs are weapons of Sauron's forces, and then they just. Well, yeah, and that's also Krogan from Mass Effect. You unleash these weapons, and then what do you do with them?
Well, and I guess you probably I don't like the idea of orcs being universally quote unquote civilized or uncivilized. Really, I think that if they're all living in bamboo huts, that kind of ventures into some stuff I'm not quite comfortable with. But I like the idea of them sort of trying to reconstruct a culture entirely, like, because it's been a while since the war, and orcs don't have very long lifespans. So they're basically trying to reconstruct a culture from scratch.
And they were and if the elves just like let them go and then didn't bother to rein them back in, they were just left on their own. They got nothing to do. So it's like, well, what do you do after that?
Yeah, what do you do when war has been your entire life, and then the war's over, you don't need to fight anymore?
And if you do,
okay.
That,
do you have anything else for us to do?
Like is actually an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Furniture. So. I'm sure it is.
Some of the orcs would probably, keep on going around raiding things. Others, the orcs, well, look, I killed that guy. That guy had a farm. Maybe I'll just start farming.
Well, and to bring it back to Star Wars again, in the Clone Wars cartoon, there are two factions of Mandalorians. The fanatical Death Watch Mandalorians, who are like, Mandalorians fight wars. That's all we do. We're warriors. And then pacifist Mandalorians who are in charge, and they're like, cool, it's the year 15 ABY because our calendar makes no sense. No. Like, we're part of the galaxy now. So you can have both sides of it, where there are orcs who are like, we need another war to fight. And other orcs who are like, wars are done. We just need to get along with everybody now.
Yeah. And
so yeah, I don't like them to be I don't like when even though we're establishing this, I don't like when races are all evil. I don't think orcs are all evil.
Essentialism is dumb and bad.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes, and I won't change my position on that.
Oh, that's a good one. That seems like a Marty joke, though.
What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, there's a Star Wars book called Lost Stars, where the idealist remains with the Empire because the Empire's doing this for a reason. Like, Emperor Palpatine has a plan. He's not evil. He has a plan. Like, obviously, we just had to blow up that planet for some reason. They were coming at me. They had a blaster. This doesn't sound good.
I fear for my life.
Yeah, and the cynic joins the rebellion because fuck it. Like, what's the point? I'm just gonna die in an X-wing.
That's actually an awesome. Like, I love. Because here's the thing: the great character arc where you have the cynic in that situation is. I also like the idea of them being a mercenary society, CC, like, and kind of having their power struggles. It is sort of might makes right, but I think it would still be a lot more organized than you would see in sort of more conventional D&D settings. Maybe it's just me obsessing over Shadows of Mordor, but whatever. I like the idea of that because with the cynic, you have this amazing character arc where in basically throwing themselves into this situation that seems hopeless, they discover a passion and they discover themselves. So that's a great character arc. And it's a positive character arc. Unfortunately, the idealist is probably going to have all their dreams and hopes crushed, which is also a character arc, but it's a sad one. That's my IRL character arc, actually, but let's not get into that right now.
Okay. Okay, let's see. These are all really, really not thorough. Because we've been talking about a lot, and I haven't written it all down. But that's fine. I can always watch this video back and make this make more sense.
So I think for orcs, not like a totally anarchic society, but probably a might makes right one that has a strong emphasis on military hierarchy, but doesn't necessarily have people, sitting around bamboo huts.
Marty made a suggestion is that the orcs were the only ones that were allowed architecture.
I didn't see that.
As part of like some sort of agreement. I do like maybe like they got around it, like they compromised with the elves. It's like, yeah, we'll do architecture, but like maybe they like carve like they carved buildings into like rocks and things and made it look very naturalistic. So it looks like a city. Like I guess we're bringing back the Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's that that air temple that was like carved into the side of a cliff face. Like maybe have that version of architecture that they were allowed to do.
Yeah. I think they would still, yeah, and I guess you have to have some kind of architecture if you want to have a kind of centralized system, but no, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, it would really piss off dwarves too, because like, hey, we were doing that too, and they got, mad at us.
What the hell, guys? That's all, we were just doing that with some blasty powder. What's wrong with you? And yes, they call it blasty powder. What's your problem?
Okay, so let's see. Allowed architecture by I can spell.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily like a ban on architecture. It's just, I think it, like we said, magic versus kind of industrialization.
Yeah, as long as, orcs use, like, wooden tools and things like that. Or they just, like, punch the wall and the whole falls down. Like,
they can still use metal tools. Like, it's...
That depends on how far you want to go magic versus industrialization. Are they allowed to use tools, or do they have to... So, me?
Yeah.
It depends on how far you want to go with magic versus industrialization. Are they allowed to use tools? Or do they have to... No, we learned how to do this with magic... So, you do it too. We can. Go ahead. Learn shape wood.
I almost feel like it's kind of like a stigma in elven culture to like use physical tools to do something, but it's still present. And
it's like if you want to write something, you can't write it with your hand. You have to cast Mage Hand and then write it.
It's like if you see someone write like just writing normally, it's like, oh, you're writing. Okay then. Fine. That's wow. All right. That's if you have to do that in public, it's a bit
Okay, let's see.
Like they very much frown on sort of labor, which is I think also a good contrast with dwarves, who are very much like traditionally at least artisans with their hands and whatnot.
It could also be that the fact that the elves want everyone to use magic and only magic and nothing new, but then they won't teach anybody magic. So it's like...
Oops, looks like we have all the power now. Whoops, what an unintended side effect.
But it could also be the fact that, like, it's like, no, you should use magic to do this thing. And the other person be like, oh, cool, can you teach it to me? And they're like, no, you wouldn't understand. It's magic.
Yeah.
It's like you have to study for 100 years to learn it. And then it's like, but I'm a human. I'm only going to live, like, to 80. He's like, well, sucks to be you.
Because we're sort of reconstructing orcs like a post-war reconstruction of their culture, I think it's okay that we have sort of these differing ideas of what orcs should be in this setting. But I think we do agree that orcs should be in this setting because orcs are cool.
Yeah, and it's like you don't have. It's like it's a big area, so it's like you can have all the orcs you want, and then they can all be different things.
Yeah.
No giant generalizations. You can have nomadic orcs, or you can have, more industrialized orcs and things like that. And you can have orcs that just go around murdering people. It takes all kinds.
Yeah.
It takes all kinds of orcs to make orc.
Okay. Let's see.
I personally have a soft spot for giants, but I don't know how they would fit into this campaign.
They're just really, really big orcs.
You could do that. They are just different kinds of... They are like magically altered orcs who are weapons of war, and they're, the fire giants are just heavily armored shock troopers. And
for me, that makes more sense for ogres.
Well, I mean, ogres are just a different kind of giant.
Well, I don't know. I guess the reason I like giants is because they're not that. Like, I like cloud giants, I like storm giants, I like that they have sort of these ancient kingdoms that kind of decayed over time.
Maybe then they could be the ancient kingdoms of the world. Like they were here before elves, and then they fucked off, and then like the elves were like, "Oh, cool, we can just be the older brother ones," and maybe that could be like part of a quest line or something like that, where the adventurers, in order to like maybe stop the elves, would go off and try to find the last giant and try to figure out their whole biz.
Yeah, and I would. Let's put a pin in giants for now. I just don't. I'm trying to think of how they would fit in.
I mean,
because with giants and dragons, the issues with giants and dragons is, okay, if there are giants and dragons, that means there is a force that is like automatically as powerful or more powerful than whatever they're up against.
well, with giants, I do like the idea. I always like the idea that there was at one point a giant empire. That's in the Forgotten Realms as well, and I always like that. I also kind of like the idea that there just aren't really giants anymore. It's you. There's a giant castle over there. You don't know who lived there. And then the other thing is to address your point and how they do it in the Forgotten Realms and stuff. Giants are controlled by the Ordning, so they literally can't fuck with things because storm giants are in charge. So if in this setting, storm giants just allied themselves with the elves, and the storm giants tail all the rest of the giants, the elves are in charge now. Don't do anything. Then you could do something like Storm King's Thunder, where if the ordning is broken, then what happens? But
I like the idea of there used to be giants, but now there aren't giants. But they built all this cool shit.
Yeah, what Liz was saying, and yeah, okay, let's see. Former giant empire.
Exists somewhere.
Ruins contain, and then if there are ruins and the elves don't like that there are ruins, because they are a blight on the land, they would also try and control and tear them down and steal all the things that are inside.
Yeah.
And
lo and behold, who are the people that are always tunneling underground and into stone structures and exploring? Well, oh, it's the dwarves and the drow. Whoops. And maybe now that could be a hook for how the adventure starts. Is there's a bunch of dwarven and drow explorers who have developed a of resorting to these old giant technologies and magics that were long thought lost.
Didn't the Wizards of the Coast do like a whole bunch of subclasses that were giant related?
Yes, and I may or may not have a character written up already that's literally just an old robot that was destroyed and then reactivated after giants went extinct.
The Iron Giant?
Fuck! Totally is the Iron Giant. Except he fights, so he's not the Iron Giant.
I mean, the Iron Giant fights. He doesn't like to fight.
This robot's purpose was to build shit and then learn to fight.
Okay, let's see.
Or you could just have those, like, robots. They're kind of just walking around because they're not really intelligent, but they're still, like, performing the same tasks. It's like you have the same robot who has been in the ruins, paving the same wall for 2,000 years after the Empire went away.
Okay.
And that's how you get golems in there.
Let's think.
And Warforged.
But, okay, so do we want to do something with dragons, or are dragons just not really around?
I like the idea of royal families having sort of some dragon's blood, if that is something we can do.
Do you want to maybe do like the Terry Pratchett version of dragons, which are just like inbred little like chihuahua?
I do love Terry Pratchett dragons. There's one proper dragon, and then the rest of them are, designer bred shit dragons.
Maybe beyond that, there's like a whole subclass of animals and everything that's just like, okay, look, some dragons decided to experiment in ways that were not good, and now we have all of these, like, there's like Draconus, like, that's the biological nomenclature, and then there's like 400 other species in the Draco family.
Okay, yeah, well, okay. Because then what are Dragonborn? And are Dragonborn here? Because the other thing we could just say is no Dragonborn, no Tieflings, whatever. It could just be the kind of the classic Tolkien races if we wanted.
I like the idea of people having dragon's blood, but there being no true dragons left. Or there's like one sleeping 1,000 miles under the ground or whatever. Marty made a very interesting suggestion.
Dragons were cursed and now they're Dragonborn?
That is...
Is that one or the other one?
That one. That is the one.
Yeah, it's... Fuck. I have no wings, I'm all tiny.
Sucks! Or like, I would imagine it would have been like, oh, the eggs didn't hatch right or whatever. But still, that's a great idea. That could have...
What was it called? It was called Fire Breather. It was a comic book from the late 90s or early 2000s where essentially Godzilla has a human wife and she has a kid. And he's essentially a dragonborn. He's got like little stubby wings and he can breathe fire and he's super strong and stuff like that. But
I don't want to ask how that works.
He's never addressed. It never gets weird or anything.
Okay, good.
But yeah, I think his dad can shapeshift. I can't remember. But yeah, his dad's just a giant, and he's kind of disappointed in his son. Oh, you're not a real dragon. Like, oh, this sucks.
What did you expect, man?
And he's divorced. It's a good
That's
comic.
actually what I was thinking is, like, the elves would, like, in order to prevent these, basically so that nobody could challenge them. And this might be the part where sort of there's a bit of a split inside the elves communities, because like, wait, dragons do even more magic than we do. Are we sure we're going to go through with this? It's like, no, we have to be the only magic. And then it evolves into like an elf-dragon conflict for a short while, but because there aren't that many dragons, the elves eventually win. And now there are no true dragons left, only dragonborn.
From Lost War with elves? Question mark. First. Okay. Let's see. Anything else we want to kind of add right now before we wrap it up? We can always add to this later. I will share this in chat and I'll make it so that anyone can edit it. The only thing I would say is if you edit it, change your font color and just write at the top what your font color is.
Okay.
But do we want to address anything before we start doing plugs? Do we want to name the evil empire and or its leader? Or do we want to talk about like tieflings, Aarakocra, anything slightly off the beaten path?
Tieflings and ASMR, I think, are there, but are like basically as is what I would do.
Yeah.
Just because it's fun to play as them.
It's sometimes you don't need a special version of it. It's Kenku or just Kenku, like Aarakocra, just bird people. Who cares?
I will say, I think if we do put Tieflings and ASMR, it should be based on descent rather than based on pacts. So if you are a Tiefling, 8 generations back or whatever, you have a demon in your family tree.
Yeah. That's fine. What was I gonna say? Tieflings.
Kenku are there, but we never explain why. It's a mystery. They're just there.
Oh. Yeah, Marty's asking, is there a blood war, other planes, bigger questions for another day, perhaps, but it does tie into tieflings, yeah. I typically, in all of my settings, I typically just think, unless I specifically say otherwise, all the other planes are the same, so you can still go to Hell. Asmodeus is in charge of Hell. Dis is still ruled by Dispater. The Abyss has demon lords, and they're all roughly the same. Whether or not Lolth is worshipped as a god on your plane is up to debate. But I do, so the Blood War is still a thing. I personally I think that's easier. If someone else has a cooler idea where elves are just like, we'll win this Blood War for you, and go off and kick a bunch of angel ass or something.
That would be funny if the elves just... But I don't think that's necessarily a good idea.
I mean, there are those winged elves.
There are winged elves.
Right. Maybe...
Avariel, I think they're called.
Okay, maybe that's the noble bloodline of elves, is like winged elves.
Or they're the biggest dicks on the planet.
We can fly.
Yes, we like you, but we can fly. How do you like them apples? Like, they're somehow even more pretentious.
Okay. I have two things I want to talk about before we log off, and the first one is the Pantheon. Is it just the elfish Pantheon?
I think we should make our own, because that can be fun sometimes.
Okay. So we will talk about that at a different time then, because we are not going to have time to do a full Pantheon.
Put a God's tab somewhere.
Yeah, Pantheon. Okay. So, I think we should name the Empire and its leader before we log off. Right now, I have Evil Elven Empire. It's not very good.
Okay. Gonna mash my keyboard and then turn it into a word.
It should have something like immortal in it, because like they're elves and they're dick.
Okay. So even though it's not true, well, we're almost immortal.
Makes sense.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm totally
more immortal than you.
Yeah.
I closed my eyes, then I mashed on my keyboard, and the thing that came out is Shy Irji.
No.
Shy Irji. Too fantasy.
We can write it down.
Don't, because here's the thing: if you write down a name that we're not into, that eventually that name's gonna stick, even if it's tentative.
Okay. We have evidence of it forever if we change our minds. Okay. Immortal. I like Immortal.
Soup has a good one.
No, she doesn't. Nope.
Evil and Empire.
I think Marty's is better. And I think it's very easy to pronounce and spell.
Yes.
Also,
how about we make Marty's like not ridiculous when we call it Gwenethel or something?
It's very Welsh, so I'm into it.
Well, we mashed together that one and the one Dan said and put like Sheer Gwenethel or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe Shirji can be like the capital, and then Gwenethel can be the No, actually, maybe reverse. Okay, write down all of the stupid names we come up with, and then we can sort of slot them in for stuff later.
Hold on, let me copy Marty's thing. My favorite part of this is, ask yourself, are these L's or I's? Think about it. Yeah, that's terrible. Hold on, let me...
The Immortal Empire of Gwenethel.
How?
Or, sorry, no, Gwenethel for short. The long form is the Immortal Empire of Sheer Gwenethel. But most people just say Gwenethel. Even, like, the most pretentious elves are like, okay, yeah, we get it. It's a bit of a mouthful.
But the Immortal Empire is, even if people don't say Gwenethel, if they just say the Immortal Empire, that's a good human shorthand for it.
Yeah. Well, people would probably just call it the Empire at some point. But I like the idea of having a ridiculously complicated, like, long-form name. That is very on brand.
Okay. So we've got some proper LV names. We've got the Immortal Empire. Yeah, and okay, do we want to give the king or emperor a title? I do think it is funny when fantasy places are called one thing and then the person who leads them is not the proper title. So, like, the Archduchy of... Or no, the Principality of Zeon in Gundam is ruled by a prince. Shouldn't it be an Archduke? No, a prince. I think that is funny. That is not necessarily a good naming convention.
See, we could have the leader of the Empire be called a Chancellor or something.
Yeah, I'm the Prince Regent. You're not an emperor? No. Of course I'm not. I am legally elected every 1,000 years. Oh, great.
Exactly. Technically it's a republic.
If they're elves, like, should it be like the High Priest or something like that, or something like Nature and Woods?
Yeah, an Archdruid or something.
Yeah.
Grand Circle of something. Maybe it's like there's a different, like, maybe they have sort of a council of, like, the best of whatever class they are. Like, there's a high priest, an archdruid, and like an arch wizard or something.
If we were still doing the carved up by a bunch of lieutenants, it could just be like they have a council every so often and they get together, and then there's maybe one guy who's like the John Hancock who's just there to be, just a voice to say, okay, shut up now, I'm talking, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically, it's sort of the quote-unquote emperor could largely be like a figurehead position. Or not a figurehead position, but clearly, at least in some way, at the mercy of whoever they can hope to be loyal provincial leaders.
Sure, they don't have enough... I can't spell. They don't have enough proper authority to do anything, but people still...
Yeah.
The ruler is called the Archfey. Is that blasphemous? I'm not saying it's a bad... I'm just saying, is that would they consider that blasphemous?
Maybe... Oh, okay, idea. Like the scion of the Archfey. So they're called, like, the scion. The full title could be Scion of the Archfey.
Okay, first of all, I'm a fan of ridiculous titles that people have. Especially elves.
Yeah.
So I'm down.
A lieutenant.
It's not how it's...
No, and one of the humans, one of the human commanders, his name is Captain Lieutenant. Like, his first name Lou, last name Tennant. I stole that joke from Fallout New Vegas.
I mean, his full name is Lewis, but, his friends call him Lou.
Yeah, so Lieutenant.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, the Emperors, I wouldn't say a figurehead, but their power does vary depending on how loyal their, kind of provincial leaders are. I'm kind of picturing the governmental structure being kind of similar to, like, late Roman Empire, where the governors had way too much power, and it was just constant war.
Liz also says Soup says in chat, if you can consider, historically there are civilizations who believe that their emperors or pharaohs are gods. So if we did say they are scion of the Archfey. It's, yeah, you're literally a kid of the gods. Like, but to piggyback off of as the Roman Empire kind of fell when governors had too much power, in Egypt, the pharaoh was still considered, a god king, except, in various times in Egyptian history, their power wasn't actually that powerful. Priests might have been more powerful. Generals might have been more powerful, depending on the pharaoh.
I really love the idea of it being like a pope-type figure who is the leader of the Elven Empire.
Grand High Pope.
Like, they would have more power than, like, the Pope, but a lot of their power is derived from their supposed connection to the gods.
Druid Pope. Druid
Pope.
The High Seed!
Wow. It's a real shame Marty can't stay either, but that is good. I'm writing it down.
It's actually the Holy Seed. I'm sorry, I'm banned too now.
There we go. Okay. I think we have lots of good ideas here that we can expand on at a later date. Some names to consider, some titles to consider, some... We got over a page, although the top half is garbage. Because it's just nothing. Queer Eye for the Orc Guide. Let me save that. That's worth it.
That's a whole campaign right there.
Yeah, let me save that down here. And then Corporal Moron, Horty McEvilface. I'll throw these under elves.
Yeah, Corporal. Look, here's the thing. After Corporal Moron and Horty McEvilface, the next boss is Captain Lieutenant, and then is Lieutenant Sarge NT. His initials. His first name is Sarge. His initials are NT. And then some other dumb pun name. I can't think of one right now.
On The Simpsons, there is a character who is named LT Surge until someone figures out that the little period between the T's is a sticker, and he's a lieutenant in the Navy. And then he says, "That's right. My name is Lieutenant LT Surge." And it's like, wait. I just always love that joke.
Lieutenant Surge is a gym leader.
Surge might not be his last name. I can't remember. But the joke is Lieutenant, and his real name is still LT. But, okay. Thank you both.
This is a very productive session. I'm really excited to work on this.
Thank you both for joining me. Outros and plugs. Liz.
I am Liz. You can just mainly find me here. Just talk to me. I've been in my house for days, so I have a lot of things to think about and talk about.
I'm glad. I mean, no, well, let me... Never mind. I'm glad that we're stuck in our houses.
And Daniel.
Hi, I'm not glad that I'm stuck in my house, but I'm glad that I get to talk to my friends. And y'all are great. I love this group very much. This heart fingers. You can catch me at LightningFast11 on Twitter. Honestly, I don't think I'm really up to much right now. Andy.
I'm Andy Hatton. My name's Andy Hatton. At Andy Hatton. Andy Hatton. I've been in my house for like 2.5 weeks now, so I'm doing great.
Day 15! Give it up for day 15!
Everything's great. Thank you both so much for joining me. This was very fun. We will continue to work on this. This week, Star Chasers and Jay is back with another 3D art at the end on Friday. And yeah, have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.